meditation is supposed to be fun. It's not something you do as a grim duty. The trouble with religion as we know it is that it is so mixed up with grim duties. We do it because it's good for you. It's a kind of self-punishment. Well, meditation, when correctly done, has nothing to do with all that. It's a kind of digging the present. It's a kind of grooving with the eternal now. And brings us into a state of peace where we can understand that the point of life, the place where it's at, is simply here and now.
This moment is the creation of the universe. It's starting now. If you look back and wonder whether there was a big bang a long time ago, all you'll see is vanishing traces. The big bang is happening now. This is when the world begins. You're doing it. Only you're not doing it by straining. A you deeper than the straining you is doing all this. The same you that is growing your hair and coloring your eyes and making your thumbprints and all that. You don't think about it. You don't strain muscles to do it. But that is what is creating the world. Here it comes. Now. So instead of thinking that the past is the reality which explains everything that happens now, let's look at now.
On the Fringe with Dan, RadioStyle. Hope everybody out there's having themselves a great day. I just wanted to make sure we were pulling the live thing off properly here. We've got a wonderful concept here that I am extremely fond of. I think I've actually been involved with for many, many lifetimes. I think this is something I've been a part of, frankly. But Law of One is something that matters a lot to me. It is what I would like, and I don't know, to make it simple, it's sort of more of a galactic religion than necessarily an Earth religion. And I think there's some of the differences. And so today we're actually going to talk about Jesus. He gets brought up. And again, Carla, the lady doing the channeling, is actually, she's always holding a Bible. That's one of her symbols and one of her things that matters to her. So she's got that background, that filter, if you will, that is a part of her. And because of the, I swear I feel like there's like later on in the raw materials, they raise this density to a higher number, but whatever the case was, it's very interesting. We're going to talk more about it. It's fantastic. They also talk about the Tunguska location. There was a crater that's out there, just like, I think it petrified a bunch of trees, created a crater, just this crazy explosion happened. They said it was like a meteor that exploded right before the ground, but they talk about that. And, of course, the transfer of what we're going through right now. One of the things I'm most curious about as an individual going through this, part of why I'm doing this, quote-unquote, learn teaching of this, but teach learning for sure, is the way the transition happens into 4D. I'm almost 100% sure that's happening. Just there's been so many different points of reference throughout my life by many, many different kinds of people, many, many books, different ways, just different. It's almost 100% sure. And it's how that plays out that has always fascinated me. You know, a lot of people talk about the rapture. And the rapture is kind of like the one thing where I'm like, maybe, all right, that might be. Right? There might just be this, like, just suddenly, poof, a bunch of people are gone. Now, I think it's going to be the ones that are lower density, no offense. For those that thought that they would, get to leave the planet and evil would fight. No, I don't think that's going to happen either. I unfortunately don't think Revelation is going to quite play out the way they want it to. They're trying. They're desperately trying with Israel. So we'll see what happens through all that. All said, I don't want to necessarily tie this to a date because there's a lot going on. It's a big part of why I wanted to teach this information at this time. in my life because, again, this is something that I have followed for many years. And this 4D transfer, how this plays out, how we get from where we are to this place where, for the most part, evil's not really part of this plane, or service to self certainly isn't. And a lot of these things will literally have been kind of subsided, really. They'll be gone for the most part. And so won't be as prevalent. And I don't think people, self-included to a degree, but I don't think people appreciate how different things will be when we're not constantly cast in the shadow of fear or cast in the shadow of anger. Both of these things are used so heavily against us, and in many cases are hurting us, right? So this is a big part of where we're trying to help transition through this. Maybe some of you guys are actually the ones that are going to graduate this time around. Maybe you're some of the people that are here to help. Much like myself, I call us people with flashlights. That's what I like to call us, beacon of light, if you will. But yeah, I'm just over here helping. So we're all going through something together, no matter what. That we can rest on. So again, 4D transfer, transition, how that kind of plays out. We'll talk more about it. Tunguska is kind of fun. And then Jesus, yeah, it's all happening here. Episode or session 17. Of course, again, recorded back in 1981. Just keep that in mind. It was a long time ago. And so where we are now versus where we are then versus 2012 and the time that the timeline that we actually got onto, it was even pretty significant. Anyway, we're getting into all sorts of crazy woo. Let's just keep it to session 17 for the moment, Dan. But it is right here. It is on the Fringe. And this is Law of One, session 17. The Law of One, session 17, recorded February 3rd, 1981. Ra, I am Ra. I greet you in the love and the light of the infinite Creator. Before we communicate by answer, we shall correct an error which we have discovered in the transmission of our information to you. We have difficulty dealing with your time-space. There may again be errors of this type. Feel free to question us that we may recalculate in your time-space measurements. The error we have discovered concerns one of the arrivals of both the Orion group into your planetary sphere of influence and the corresponding arrival of emissaries of the Confederation. We gave dates of 2600, 2600 years for the Orion entry and 2300 for the Confederation, 2300. This is incorrect. The recalculation indicates numbers 3600, 3600 for the Orion entry and 3300, 3300 for the Confederation entry. We communicate now. Questioner, thank you very much. I wish to say again, consider it an honor, great honor, and also a privilege as my inaudible. And I would like to reiterate that my questions may sometimes go a little off because I keep going on something that I had already started to work into the application of the Law of One to better understand primarily the free will principle and further distortions that we discover. I got 3 questions just now in meditation. I'll ask them first before we continue. First, we are now in the 4th density. Will the effects of the 4th density increase into the next 30 years? Will we see more changes in our environment and our effect upon our environment? Ra, I am Ra. The 4th density is a vibrational spectrum. Your time-space continuum has spiraled your planetary sphere and your, what we would call galaxy, what you call star, into this vibration. This will cause the planetary sphere itself to electromagnetically realign its vortices of reception of the in-streaming of cosmic forces, expressing themselves as vibrational webs, so that the Earth will thus be 4th density magnetized, as you might call it. This is going to occur with some inconvenience, as we have said before, due to the energies of the thought forms of your people, which disturb the orderly constructs of energy patterns within your Earth's spirals of energy, which increases entropy and unusable heat. This will cause your planetary sphere to have some ruptures in its outer garment while making itself appropriately magnetized for 4th density. This is the planetary adjustment. You will find a sharp increase in the number of people, as you call mind-body-spirit complexes, whose vibrational potentials include the potential for 4th vibrational distortions. Thus, there will seem to be, shall we say, a new breed. These are those incarnating for fourth density work. There will also be a sharp increase in the short run of negatively oriented or polarized mind-body-spirit complexes and social complexes due to the polarization conditions of the sharp delineation between fourth density characteristics and third density self-service orientation. Those who remain in the fourth density upon this plane will be of the so-called positive orientation. Many will come from elsewhere, for it would appear that with all of the best efforts of the Confederation, which includes those from your people's inner planes, inner civilizations, and those from other dimensions, the harvest will still be much less than that which this planetary sphere is capable of comfortably supporting in service. Questioner: is it possible to help an entity to reach fourth density level in these last days? Ra: I am Ra. It is impossible to help another being directly. It is only possible to make catalyst available in whatever form. The most important being the radiation of realization of oneness with the Creator from the Self. Less important being information such as we share with you. We, ourselves, do not feel an urgency for this information to be widely disseminated. It is enough that we have made it available to 3, 4, or 5. This is extremely ample reward, for if one of these obtains fourth density understanding due to this catalyst, then we shall have fulfilled the law of one in this distortion of service. We encourage dispassionate attempts to share information without concern for numbers or quick growth among others. That you attempt to make this information available is, in your term, your service. The attempt, if it reaches one, reaches all. We cannot offer shortcuts to enlightenment. Enlightenment is of the moment, is an opening to the intelligent infinity. It can only be accomplished by the self for the self. Another self cannot teach, learn enlightenment, but only teach, learn information, inspiration, or a sharing of love, of mystery, of the unknown that makes the other self reach out and begin the seeking process that ends in a moment. But who can know when an entity will open the gate to the present? Questioner: in meditation a few nights ago, I had the impression of a question about a crater in Russia. I believe it was in Tunguska. Can you tell me what caused the crater? Ra: I am Ra. The destruction of a fission reactor caused this crater. Questioner: whose reactor? Ra: I am Ra. This was what you may call a drone sent by the Confederation which malfunctioned. It was moved to an area where its destruction would not cause infringement upon the will of the mind-body-spirit complexes. It was then detonated. Questioner: what was the purpose in coming here? Ra: it was a drone designed to listen to the various signals of your peoples. You were, at the time, beginning work in a more technical sphere. We were interested in determining the extent and the rapidity of your advances. This drone was powered by a simple fission motor, or engine, as you would call it. It was not that type which you now know, but was very small. However, it has the same destructive effect upon third-density molecular structures. Thus, as it malfunctioned, we felt it was best to pick a place for its destruction rather than an attempt to retrieve it, for the probability modes of this maneuver looked very, very minute. Questioner: was it danger, both blast and radiation? Ra: I am Ra. There is very little radiation, as you know of it, in this particular type of device. There is radiation which is localized, but the localization is such that it does not drift with the winds as does the emission of somewhat of your primitive weapons. Questioner: I believe that an analysis of the trees in the area has shown a low radiation level. Is this the reason for such a low radiation level in the trees? Ra: I am Ra. This is correct. The amount of radiation is very localized. However, the energy which is released is powerful enough to cause difficulties. Questioner: then was the Confederation responsible for Earth receiving nuclear power? Ra: I am Ra. It is a point which one cannot judge. What is cause? The basic equation which preceded this work was an equation brought through by a wanderer dedicated to service to the planet. That this work should have become foundation for instruments of destruction was not intended and was not given. Questioner: Can you tell me who that wanderer was that brought through the equation? Ra. I am Ra. This information seems harmless, as this entity is no longer of your planetary third density. This entity was named Sound Vibrational Complex Albert. Questioner. Thank you. Can you tell me who, before incarnation into this density, was the one known as Jesus of Nazareth? Ra. I am Ra. I have difficulty with this question as it is phrased. Can you discover another form for this query? Questioner. Yes. What I mean to say was, can you tell me if Jesus of Nazareth came from the Confederation before incarnation here? Ra. I am Ra. The one known to you as Jesus of Nazareth did not have a name. This entity was a member of fifth density of the highest level of that suboctave. This entity was desirous of entering this planetary sphere in order to share the love vibration in as pure a manner as possible. Thus, this entity received permission to perform this mission. This entity was then a wanderer of no name, of Confederation origins, of fifth density, representing the fifth density, understanding of the vibration of understanding or love. There's an asterisk. This should be fourth. Ra corrects the error in the next answer. Questioner, did you say the fifth vibration was that of love? Fifth density was that of love? Ra. I am Ra. I have made an error. The fourth density being is that which we intended to say, the highest level of fourth density going into the fifth. This entity could have gone on to the fifth, but chose instead to return to the third for this particular mission. This entity was one of the highest sub-octave of the vibration of love. This is the fourth density. Questioner, when I am communicating with you as Ra, are you at times an individualized entity, or am I speaking to the entire complex? Ra. I am Ra. You speak with Ra. There is no separation. You would call it a social memory complex, thus indicating manyness. To our understanding, you are speaking to an individualized portion of consciousness. Questioner. Do I always speak to the same individualized portion of consciousness in each of the sessions? Ra. I am Ra. You speak to the same entity through a channel or instrument. This instrument is at times lower in vital energy. This will sometimes hamper our proceedings. However, this instrument has a great deal of faithfulness to the task and gives whatever it has to this task. Therefore, we may continue even when energy is low. This is why we usually speak to the ending of the session due to our estimation of the instrument's levels of vital energy. Questioner. I would like to make a point clear now that I am sure of myself. People of this planet, following any religion or no religion at all, or having no intellectual knowledge of the law of one or anything of it at all, can still be harvested into the fourth density if they are of that vibration. Is this not correct? Ra. I am Ra. This is correct. However, you will find few who are harvestable whose radiance does not cause others to be aware of their, what you may call, spirituality, the quality of the mind-body-spirit complex distortion. Thus, it is not particularly probable that an entity would be completely unknown to his immediate acquaintances as an unusually radiant personality, even were this individual not caught up in any of the distortions of your so-called religious systems. Questioner. When Jesus of Nazareth incarnated, was there an attempt by the Orion group to discredit him in any way? Ra. I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner. Can you tell me what the Orion group did in order to try to cause his downfall? Ra. I am Ra. We may describe in general what occurred. The technique was that of a building upon other negatively oriented information. This information had been given by one whom your peoples called Yahweh. This information involved many strictures upon behavior and promised power of the third density, service to self-nature. These two types of distortions were impressed upon those already oriented to think these thought forms. This eventually led to many challenges of the entity known as Jesus. It eventually led to one sound vibration complex, Judas, as you call this entity, who believes that it was doing the appropriate thing in bringing about or forcing upon the one you call Jesus the necessity for bringing in the third density planetary power distortion of third density rule over others. This entity, Judas, felt that if pushed into a corner, the entity you call Jesus would then be able to see the wisdom of using the power of intelligent infinity in order to rule others. The one you call Judas was mistaken in this estimation of the reaction of the entity. Jesus, whose teach learning was not oriented towards this distortion. This resulted in the destruction of the bodily complex of the one known as Jesus to you. Questioner: then if the entity Jesus was fourth density, and there are wanderers on this planet who come from the fifth and sixth density, what was it in Jesus did it enable him to be such a good healer, and could these fifth and sixth density beings here today do the same? Ra: I am Ra. Those who heal may be of any density which has the consciousness of the spirit. This includes third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh. The third density can be one in which healing takes place, just as the others. However, there is more illusory material to understand, to balance, to accept, and to move forward from. The gate to intelligent infinity can only be opened when an understanding of the in-streamings of intelligent energy are open unto the healer. These are the so-called natural laws of your local space-time continuum and its web of electromagnetic sources or nexi of in-streaming energy. Know then first the mind and the body. Then as the spirit is integrated and synthesized, those are harmonized into a mind-body-spirit complex, which can move among the dimensions and which can move the gateway to intelligent infinity, thus healing self by light and sharing that light with others. True healing is simply the radiance of the self causing an environment in which a catalyst may occur which initiates the recognition of self by self of the self-healing properties of the self. Questioner: how did Jesus learn this during his incarnation? Ra: I am Ra. This entity learned the ability by a natural kind of remembering at a very young age. Unfortunately, this entity first discovered his ability to penetrate intelligent infinity by becoming the distortion you call angry at a playmate. This entity was touched by the entity known as Jesus to you and was fatally wounded. Thus, the one known as Jesus became aware that there dwelt in him a terrible potential. This entity determined to discover how to use this energy for good, not for the negative. This entity was extremely positively polarized and remembered more than most wanderers do. Questioner: how did this aggressive action against a playmate affect Jesus in his spiritual growth? Where did he go after the physical death? Ra: I am Ra. The entity you call Jesus was galvanized by this experience and began a lifetime of seeking and searching. This entity studied first day and night in its own religious constructs, which you call Judaism, and was learned enough to be a rabbi, as you would call teach learners of this particular rhythm or distortion of understanding at a very young age. At the age of approximately 13 and 1/2 of your years, this entity left the dwelling place of its earthly family, as you would call it, and walked into many other places seeking further information. This went on sporadically until the entity was approximately 25, at which time it returned to its family dwelling and learned and practiced the art of its earthly father. When the entity had become able to integrate or synthesize all experiences, the entity began to speak to other selves and learn what it had felt during the preceding years to be of an worthwhile nature. The entity was absolved karmically of the destruction of the other self when it was in its last portion of lifetime, and spoke upon what you would call a cross, saying, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." In forgiveness lies the stoppage of the wheel of action, or what you call karma. Questioner: then in which density does the entity known as Jesus now reside? Ra: I am Ra. This information is harmless, though unimportant. This entity studies now the lesson of the wisdom vibration of the fifth density, also called the light vibration. Questioner: in our culture, there is a great saying that he will return. Can you tell me if this is planned? Ra: I am Ra. I will attempt to sort out this question. It is difficult. This entity became aware that this is not an entity of itself, but operated as the messenger of the one Creator, whom this entity saw as love. This entity was aware that this cycle was in its last portion, and spoke to the effect that those of this consciousness would return at the harvest. The particular mind-body-spirit complex you call Jesus is as what you would call an entity, not to return, except as a member of the Confederation occasionally speaking through a channel. However, there are others of this identical congruency of consciousness that will welcome those to the fourth density. This is the meaning of the returning. Questioner, you spoke of the alleviation of karma being forgiveness. I'm having a hard time phrasing this question. I think I'll have to come back to it. I'll ask this other question. Can you tell me why the Earth will be fourth density positive instead of fourth density negative after the cycle is complete, since it seems that there is a greater negative population? Ra, I am Ra. The Earth seems to be negative. This is due to the quiet, shall we say, horror, which is the common distortion which those good or positively oriented entities have towards the occurrences which are of your space-time present. However, those oriented and harvestable in the ways of the service to others greatly outnumber those who are oriented towards service to self, has become that of a harvestable quality. Questioner, in other words, there will be fewer negative entities being harvested into fourth density than there will be positive? Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. The great majority of your peoples will repeat third density. Questioner, how did Taras Bulba, Genghis Khan, and Rasputin get harvested prior to this harvest? Ra, I am Ra. It is the right privilege duty of those opening consciously the gate to intelligent infinity to choose the manner of their leaving of the density. Those of negative orientation who so achieve this right duty most often choose to move forward in their learned teaching to service to self. Questioner, is this the reason for what we call spontaneous combustion? Ra, I am Ra. This is not correct. Questioner, can you tell me what causes that phenomenon? Ra, I am Ra. Picture, if you will, a forest. One tree is struck by lightning. It burns. Lightning does not strike elsewhere. Elsewhere does not burn. There are random occurrences which do not have to do with the entity, but with the window of phenomenon of which we spoke. Questioner, are these particular entities all uniquely the same, or are they just random entities? Ra, I am Ra. The latter is correct. Questioner, am I to understand that the harvest will occur in the year 2011, or will it be spread? Ra, I am Ra. This is an approximation. We have stated we have difficulty with your time-space. This is an appropriate, probable, possible time-space nexus for harvest. Those who are not in incarnation at this time will be included in the harvest. Questioner, well, if an entity wants to be service to others rather than service to self while he is in the third density, are there best ways of being of service to others, or is any way just as good as any other way? Ra, I am Ra. The best way to be service to others has been explicitly covered in previous material. We will iterate briefly. The best way of service to others is the constant attempt to seek to share the love of the Creator as it is known to the inner self. This involves self-knowledge and the ability to open the self to the other self without hesitation. This involves, shall we say, radiating that which is the essence or the heart of the mind-body-spirit complex. Speaking to the intention of your question, the best way for each seeker in third density to be of service to others is unique to that mind-body-spirit complex. This means that the mind-body-spirit complex must then seek within itself the intelligence of its own discernment as to the way it must best serve other selves. This will be different for each. There is no best. There is no generalization. Nothing is known. Questioner, thank you very much. I don't wish to take up extra time by asking questions over again. Some are so important, I try to ask in some similar questions in different ways to expand on the answer. Seems to be inaudible what we're getting at, maybe not. In the book Awaspy, it states that if an individual is more than 50% for others, that is, goes over the 50% service to others, and is less than 50% for service to self, then he is harvestable. Is this a correct statement? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct, if the harvesting is to be for the positive fourth dimensional level. Questioner. What must be the entity's percentage, shall we say, if he is to be harvested for the negative? Ra. I am Ra. The entity who wishes to pursue the path of service to self must attain a grade of 5, that is 5% service to others, 95% service to self. It must approach totality. The negative path is quite difficult to attain harvestability upon and requires great dedication. Questioner. Why is the negative path so much more difficult a path to attain harvestability upon than the positive? Ra. I am Ra. This is due to the distortion of the law of one, which indicates that the gateway to intelligent infinity be a gateway at the end of a straight and narrow path, as you may call it. To attain 51% dedication to the welfare of other selves is as difficult as attaining a grade of 5% dedication to other selves. The, shall we say, sinkhole of indifference is between those two. Questioner. Well then, if an entity is harvested into fourth density with a grade, let's say, of 51% for others, 49% for self, what level of the fourth density would he go into? I am assuming there are different levels of the fourth density. Ra. I am Ra. This is correct. Each enters the sub-density which vibrates in accordance with the entity's understanding. Questioner. How many levels do we have here in the third density at this time? Ra. I am Ra. The third density has an infinite number of levels. Questioner. I've heard that there are 7 astral and 7 devacanic primary levels. Is this correct? Ra. I am Ra. You speak of some of more large distinctions and levels in your inner planes. That is correct. Questioner. Well, who inhabits the astral and who inhabit the devacanic planes? Ra. I am Ra. Entities inhabit the various planes due to their vibrational nature. The astral planes varies from thought forms in their lower extremities to enlightened beings who become dedicated to teach learn in the higher astral planes. And the devacanic planes, as you call them, are those whose vibration are even more close to the primal distortions of love light. Beyond these planes, there are others. Questioner. Well, this is difficult. Our physical plane. Are there 7 subplanes to what we call our physical plane here? Ra. I am Ra. You are correct. This is difficult to understand. There are an infinite number of planes. In your particular space-time continuum distortions, there are 7 subplanes of mind-body-spirit complexes. You will discover the vibrational nature of these 7 planes as you pass through your experiential distortions, meeting other selves of the various levels which correspond to the energy influx centers of the physical vehicle. The invisible or inner third density planes are inhabited by those who are not of body complex natures such as yours. That is, they do not collect about their spirit-mind complexes a chemical body. Nevertheless, these entities are divided in what you may call an artificial dream within a dream into various levels. In the upper levels, desire to communicate knowledge back down to the outer planes of existence becomes less, due to the intensive learned teaching which occurs upon these levels. Questioner. Then is it necessary to penetrate one plane at a time as we move from what we called third density physical through these planes? Ra. I am Ra. It has been our experience that some penetrate several planes at one time. Others penetrate them slowly. Some in eagerness attempt to penetrate the higher planes before penetrating the energies of the so-called lower or more fundamental planes. This causes energy imbalance. You will find ill health, as you call this distortion, to frequently be the result of a subtle mismatch of energies in which some of the higher energy levels are being activated by the conscious attempts of the entity, while the entity has not penetrated the lower energy centers or sub-densities of this density. Questioner. Is there a best way to meditate? Ra. I am Ra. No. Questioner. At this time, near the end of the cycle, how are reincarnations into the physical allocated, shall I say, on this planet, in our own inaudible? Ra. I am Ra. Entities wishing to obtain critically needed experience in order to become harvestable are incarnated with priority over those who will, without too much possible doubt, need to re-experience this density. Questioner. How long has this been going on, this type of allocation? Ra. I am Ra. This has been going on since the first individual entity became conscious of its need to learn the lessons of this density. This was the beginning of what you may call a seniority by vibration. Questioner, can you explain what you mean by seniority by vibration? Ra, I am Ra. This will be the final question of this session of working. The seniority by vibration is the preferential treatment, shall we say, which follows the ways of the law of one, which encourages harvestable individuals. Each individual becoming aware of the time of harvest and the need on a self level to bend mind, body, and spirit towards the learned teaching of these lessons is given priority in order that this entity may have the best possible chance, shall we say, of succeeding in this attempt. May we ask at this time if there are any other questions? Questioner, my only question is there anything we can do to make the instrument inaudible? Ra, I am Ra. This instrument is not wearing the appropriate apparel for this work, as inpourings occur in the regions of the, what you may call, seventh chakra, as you speak of the energy centers, filtering through the sixth and so forth. This entity's other or base chakras become somewhat de-energized. Thus, this entity should be more careful in its selection of warm apparel for the part of the body complex you call the feet. May we answer any other brief questions? Questioner, just, we want to put heavier clothing on the feet. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. I will leave this instrument now. I leave you in the love and the light of the one infinite creator, Adonai. Exactly. There is so much happening in that. And of course, at the end, it's kind of funny. It's like, so we just got to put something on our feet? And it's like, yeah, that's it. All right, so a bunch of stuff on this one I want to get through. First off, magnetic adjustment, they mentioned. I've been talking about the way the magnetic field's been tripping out. That wasn't really happening back when I first started following this material. But where we are now, there is huge movements of that. So that's kind of a fun little verification, if you will. You cannot force awakening. Folks, I have been awake a long time, been trying, been a teacher, been a lot of things. Like you just can't force people to do anything. You can't. And if you actually really keep trying to, even knowing that, it actually starts to create somewhat of a karmic issue on you. It's one of those things where you've just got to let the child touch the red hot glowy thing that cooks and boils the water, right? Like, yeah, that hurt. I told you no like 500 times, right? Like, hey, eventually you're going to figure it out. Reaching one is the same thing as reaching all. I want you all to think about that just as much as myself, by the way, because it matters for me very much too. It's why I'm doing this. And though in this live, yeah, it's not the biggest numbers in the world, but I love the numbers I got. I can't believe it's that many. That's what I can't believe. I'm grateful. So you reach one, you reach them all, and I don't know. They're just off on a side salad kind of sort of, but. How many of us really are there, right? Think about it. Because a lot of us, I think, have alter selves and fun stuff. Don't you ever bump into somebody that just totally reminds you of somebody else? I swear to God, I feel like there's a lot of NPCs, non-player characters, that are just basically other people's selves. Like weird, random versions they've got running around, their version of AI. And then every once in a while, you get to bump into the real one, you know? Anyway, it's kind of crazy, but I think maybe kind of close to truth. Yeah, so Tunguska... yeah, a probe of some kind. They were here listening to us. These guys are doing crazy stuff. Want to know what they're doing. They were, right, wrong, and different, whether it was the Nazis or whether or not it was the Galactic Federation or whatever, Federation of Planets. Dun, dun, dun. I don't know. I don't know what one it's going to be, but their thing blew up. That's what happened. We're talking about it. So individualized consciousness. So when they're talking about themselves, Ra, I am Ra, and they're talking about we're an individualized consciousness. There's a lot of people that could say that's like hive mind. Maybe, but I think what it kind of is, in my opinion, is sort of what the collective consciousness is, and we've got that. And that's kind of what you can tap into, generally speaking, especially when channeling kind of just some mundane type stuff. But you can actually kind of tap into that general collective consciousness, and you're like, this is what pretty much everyone's thinking. So it's like the zeitgeist, they sometimes call it even. So I feel like there's a few ways you can look at that. Things of Jesus's life have really been simplified. So this is, they talk a lot about Jesus. I know this is kind of the hard part, but I think what always bothered me a little bit was, or a lot, frankly, but was Jesus, born, manger, cool, and I think they finally get out, and then he comes back, and he's much older, and there's a lot of years missing, years in the Jesus story, and what I had always wondered is why are there missing years? And so that led me to find some things, and I'm not going to give the books that worked for me because, one, I don't want to guide you in the way that you need to guide yourself. So it's one of those things where you've got to kind of source, higher self, whatever, show me the way. I want to learn more about this Jesus character because he was one of the, if not the, most amazing people that have ever come on this planet. He was just an amazing individual beyond what we even appreciate, unfortunately. And what's incredible is the journey that he had to go through to become Jesus. And so lost. It bugs me so much. A lot of people are like, yeah, he's just this Messiah. And it's how did he become that? He was born at some point. Everyone's like, no, he just knew. And I'm like, no, that's not really how being born works. So it's an interesting addition. There's other works that exist all over the place that can help you understand a lot more. I mean, frankly, even Channeled Material, Seth Speaks is a great book that many have read. There's a lot of good stuff. In fact, someone asked a question about Michael Sully. He's been talking about this stuff, which is very cool. I'm going to answer that question later, and I don't want to waste too much time here. The stuff he brings, first off, just stuff with Jesus. There's a bunch of books that have been removed. You guys may or may not know that. I don't want to have a big bash over that. Also, a lot of the stuff I've been reading, especially with this Mario Bigolino guy, holy crap, just a lot of the translations from Hebrew. There's some very, when you look at the actual original Hebrew text, at least as close to that as we can get, you find, and give it a good look over like this gentleman who was Friends of the Vatican prior to putting out books and talking about how, maybe things are a little different. Well, how'd you get there? Because what his question can be. So there is a lot to the original Hebrew and how that translates. And even some of it before that. Some of it, like Yahweh, for example, originally was YHWH. There were no vowels. It was before vowels. BV before vowels. It was 1600 years before Christ or whatever. So probably further, really. Judas makes more sense to me now, and again with all the Mario Bigolino stuff, just everything what they're talking about in here, and the sort of dark working through him, if you will, and that's kind of, I guess, how I see it, sort of the light and the dark. Service to self. I mean, the two exist as polarities here. They almost have to exist, but they're really, again, what you do for one, you do for all. So there is the law of one is still held together and still works. It's just two different ways of, going at it, I guess. Healing a wound versus the cause. This is one of the things that a lot of people do when they become ill, is they want to treat the illness now. But the illness came about because of something. The cause, because of. There's an imbalance in one of your chakra areas. There's an imbalance in your life. There's an imbalance in some way, shape, or form. And when you go to the imbalance and heal that, oftentimes the health problem goes away. And I've talked about chakras are going to be a big deal, and they're going to continue to be a big deal. You get a blockage in a chakra, folks, you're going to get sick in some way, shape, or form. And it's actually very mapped out. And for the most part, it's funny. I would never say it, and I still don't, because I think we're all learning it more. But they'd say that's like settled science. It almost is. Never is, of course, but it feels like it sometimes. So we've got a lot to consider when it comes to healing. You've got to heal the cause. You can't put a Band-Aid on it. Same thing with a wound that keeps seeping. You're like, why is it not healing? I don't know, let's put another Band-Aid on it for another day. No, it's never going to go away. What's causing it? What's going on? And you've got to find that cause, fix it, problem stops. Key. Mind, body. So the mind/body becomes mind, body, spirit. So mind, body is very first through third chakra. I'm aware, body. I'm running around the earth. I do physical things. I have yummy physical urges. I eat. And it's a great experience. The body part is very, very cool. The spirit part, which is what they add to, which is like a higher dimension, a version of the self, which I think is the self that has to be in order to graduate. You have to have made the great leap. I've talked about it. But you've got to be up in your upper chakras. If those are not turned on, you're probably not going to graduate. And it's cool. It's no biggie. You just get to do the cycle again. It's no big deal. And you can technically graduate in the sub-cycles if you really want to get the hell out. But oftentimes we just want to get really good at it. And that's fine. It's totally cool. Nothing wrong with this. Let's see. I'm not sure what I was saying there. Christ consciousness is something they're talking about too. Christ returning, the Christ coming. Again, it's one of these things when you kind of look into a number of different sources. Christ is the way to the other side. It's the Christ white light. It's actually like Christos, like I think it's even Messiah to some degree. But there is this portion of that we use to protect ourselves, to be able to kind of transport into the other side. It's like through that ability, through the Christ, that we do it. So Christ is an interesting thing, and it's brought, like they kind of talk about, a lot of help, a lot of helpers. Basically a bunch of friends of Jesus. They're like, buddy of his. I know Jesus. We went to school together, right? And then we're like, I'm going to come down and help. And that's what a lot of people are. There's a lot of people that are here that are not from here, that have not been like doing lifetimes here over and over. They've probably come here many a time over the past, but not as a karmic wheel kind of thing. They're literally from someplace else to help at this time. Let's see. Oh, not that many bad people, right? The service to self. There's just not that many. So again, that's why they're small number during nowadays. We overwhelm the hell out of them. Us waking up, they're screwed. There's nothing they can do about it. Harvest is when. They're saying back in 2011, they have a hard time with time. Harvest is essentially now is a good way to look at it. Seriously, if you're cool and you've got your chakras kind of grooving, you're good to go. If you haven't, seriously, I would highly recommend looking into it. Like you're buying a book or two or looking at some videos or whatever. You can do it for free if you need to. You're going to get there. Find what works for you. All right? Do the search. Let your higher self search for it and see what comes back. Don't try to do what everyone else does. Do what you need to do. Find your way, and you'll be amazed how you will get there. Let's see. Self-knowledge, change is always inside, folks. That's the thing. You've got to know yourself. You've got to understand. This goes back to the chakras and all that kind of crap. But whatever's happening to you, whatever's happening in your life, you play a part of. If it's your direct life especially, you're part of that. You're manifesting this kind of for a reason, if you will. Don't like it, there's something that sort of needs to be understood or changed. If you do like it, keep doing more of what you've been doing. It works. It's kind of funny when you really start to pay attention, because you'll start to catch yourself saying things, doing things. Everyone's path is like a fingerprint, and it truly is. Right? Everybody's got a different thing. Like when I help people, when I coach people, it's like I ask a lot of questions, and then it's like, okay, yeah, I kind of get what you're showing yourself. I know you a little bit better now, and I can kind of understand your symbology, because that's what they have symbols. Everybody does, and it's like brutal. It's like your dreams are going to be different than my dreams. Dream dictionaries are fun because they'll give you some cross-reference, but otherwise. All right, there we go. 95% versus 5% service to self. That's a tough path. You got 95% of the time. Now they're talking about, that sounds like that would be harder. And he's saying, well, that's sort of how you're looking at it. When you're actually full-blown service to self, it's actually not just constantly being selfish and just trying to figure out how people can do stuff for you. And just like, yeah, I don't care about anybody. It really, it's not as hard, I guess, if that's the path that you're going down, because that's just, you're wired that way. If you're somebody that's wired for service to others, which like me, it's just natural. You're like, why wouldn't I? Yeah, of course I'll help you. Like, right? Like, you don't even think twice about it. But service to self person, someone's like, can you help me? And you're like, yeah, hang on a second. Hey, this guy, he needs some help. Yeah, sorry, man, I got a call. But yeah, he'll help you. Right? And there you go. Done. And that's how service to self would handle the same problem. They're not as nice about it. Devacanic is dwelling of the gods, is what that refers to. They talk about it. It's a freaking weird-ass word. I had to look it up. Didn't even know how to pronounce it when I was doing the read-through. But dwelling of the gods, that makes an extraordinarily more sense to me. Reading the Mauro Biglino stuff, it is unquestionably makes more sense to me now. The whole concept of Elohim, or even Anunnaki, which goes back more to Sumerian texts, which even predates no vowel having Hebrew, predates that. And that's really where Yahweh, they think, probably first pops up, by the way. That's one of Mauro Biglino's big issues, is no one truly knows what Yahweh is, or even technically how to say it properly. They think they took what it sounded like and tried to make the word in Hebrew with the YHWH, but they don't know. And that's what Mario's whole argument is. No one knows. It so predates language of any kind that anybody actually speaks. Nobody knows. It is a lost language as far as hearing it. We can read it, sort of. So it's friggin' some of the best reading I've had, and it ties into that. So the dwelling of the gods is a very interesting thing. Planes and subplanes, I think it just gets into people that are, you've met them, they just seem a little better at the game. They just seem, right, more kind of with it, more like they understand something better and better and better, and that they've been able to take off and grow from that thing. Sometimes it's maybe making money, sometimes it's love, sometimes it's being like attractive. It's just like you have that person that no matter what, they're always pretty. It's like, how do you do that, right? Like you wake up in the morning and it's like everything's perfect, like which I don't think happens with anybody. And the seniority concept, I think that's why there's so many people here right now. Seniority, there's a lot of people that are like, give me one more chance, coach, put me in. And it's like, all right, let's see if you can do this. You think you can? And they're like, I got this. And I hope a lot of those people, one, are possibly in my audience, and two, I hope a lot of these people are people that you guys are helping and rippling with. I think they're the ones that we're dealing with. So all said, that I thought is what came. Again, we'll get questions going. I've still got to get into 18, which is a little shorter than the last one, but I'm still going to run a little long. I apologize, guys. But this gets into the concept of overcome, how we look at things sometimes when we label things and put restrictions on ourselves, just even based on a label. It's one of the things that you've got to get better at seeing in your own life, how we literally minimize ourselves, minimize what we can do, minimize our opinion, minimize what something that overbears us. And this concept of overcome sort of talks about that. Hopefully it makes a little bit more sense when we get there, but that's what I'm saying. Yahweh's in this guy, and the genetic communication, again, what the Garden of Eden really was is something that's very fun with the Mauro Biglino stuff too. Garden of Eden, what was really going on, and it wasn't actually, anyway, I don't want to get too off the rails, but it's a very interesting concept. And the way they answer the question, I feel like is a little like wishy-washy, like it could be any way. The questioner had it very stuck in his mind that the only way to create additional people is through procreation, I think. But Ra's like, you can just, you can make genetically babies, right? Like he's sort of just saying, yeah, you just genetically make them. And that ties into a lot of stuff as well. So we got that going on. And then finally, unique people. This is, I think, true. People that are, quote, gifted. Gifted people have to learn to deal with having gifts, and some of them go to separation mode, if you will, service to self, if you will. I separate from the one because I think I'm better, because I'm different, because I somehow deserve this, because I somehow, right? And your ego starts essentially controlling your journey rather than what can I do with this gift to help others. And so again, it's just, life's interesting, and there's no wrong answer. That's the thing with Law of One. There's no wrong answer. It's just service to others is the only way we're moving forward together on this planet, and other people are going to be somehow evacuated, which I'm still not sure how that's going to play out. Finally, last set here, guys. This is session 18. I think this is a little shorter. What is this one? About 19 minutes. But very good stuff. We'll talk shortly about this, and I got a couple cool questions, maybe a couple more, and then we'll cut you guys loose. Apologize for it being so long. But here is the Law of One. It's powerful stuff, and trying my best to help add a little bit of flavor to it that I think hopefully helps make it go down a little easier. on the Fringe, Dan Radio Style. The Law of One, Session 18, recorded February 4th, 1981. Ra, I am Ra. I greet you in the love and the light of the infinite creator. We communicate now. Questioner, I was thinking last night that if I were in the place of Ra at this time, the first distortion of the Law of One might cause me to mix some erroneous data with the true information that I was transmitting to this group. Do you do this? Ra, I am Ra. We do not intentionally do this. However, there will be confusion. The errors which have occurred due to the occasional variation in the vibrational complex of this instrument due to its ingest of a chemical substance. It is not our intent in this particular project to create erroneous information, but to express in the confining ambience of your language system the feeling of the infinite mastery of the one creation in its infinite and intelligent unity. Questioner, can you tell me what the chemical substance is that was ingested? Caused poor contact? Ra, I am Ra. This is not a clear query. Could you please restate? Questioner, you just stated that you had some problems with the instrument because of the ingestion by the instrument of some chemical substance. Can you tell me what the substance was? I am Ra. The substance of which we speak is called vibratory sound complex LSD. It does not give poor contact if it is used in conjunction with the contact. The difficulty of this particular substance is that there is, shall we say, a very dramatic drop-off of the effect of this substance. In each case, this instrument began the session with the distortion towards extreme vital energy, which this substance produces. However, this entity was, during the session, at the point where this substance no longer was in sufficient strength to amplify the entity's abilities to express vital energy. Thus, first the phenomenon of, shall we say, a spotty contact, and then, as the instrument relies again upon its own vibrational complexes of vital energy, the vital energy being in this case very low, it became necessary to abruptly call off communication in order to preserve and nurture this instrument. This particular chemical substance is both helpful and unhelpful in these contacts for the causes given. Questioner, are there any foods that are helpful or harmful that the instrument might eat? Ra, I am Ra. This instrument has body complex distortions towards ill health, and the distortion direction corrected best by ingestion of the foodstuff of your grains and your vegetables, as you call them. However, this is extremely unimportant when regarded as an aid with equality to other aids, such as attitude with this instrument, has its abundance. It, however, aids the vital energies of this instrument, with less distortion towards ill health, to ingest foodstuffs in the above manner with occasional ingestion of what you call your meats, due to the instrument's needs to lessen the distortion towards low vital energy. Questioner, thank you. I have a question here from Jim that I will read verbatim. Much of the mystic tradition of seeking on earth holds that belief that the individual self must be erased or obliterated and the material world ignored for an entity to reach nirvana, as it is called, or enlightenment. What is the proper role of the individual self and its worldly activities in aiding an entity to grow more into the Law of One? Ra, I am Ra. The proper role of an entity is in this density to experience all things desired, to then analyze, understand, and accept these experiences, distilling from them the love light within them. Nothing shall be overcome. That which is not needed falls away. The orientation develops due to analysis of desire. These desires become more and more distorted towards conscious application of love light, as the entity furnishes itself with distilled experience. We have found it to be inappropriate in the extreme to encourage the overcoming of any desires, except to suggest the imagination rather than carrying out in physical plane, as you call it, of those desires not consonant with the Law of One, this preserving the primal distortion of free will. The reason it is unwise to overcome is that overcoming is an unbalanced action, creating difficulties in balancing in this time-space continuum. Overcoming thus creates the further environment for holding on to that which apparently has been overcome. All things are acceptable in the proper time for each entity, and in experiencing, in understanding, in accepting, in then sharing with other selves, the appropriate description shall be moving away from distortions of one kind to distortions of another, which may be more consonant with the law of one. It is, shall we say, a shortcut to simply ignore or overcome any desires. It must instead be understood and accepted. This takes patience and experience, which can be analyzed with care, with compassion for self and for other self. Questioner: basically, I would say that to infringe on the free will of another self or another entity would be the basic thing never to do under the law of one. Can you state any other breaking of the law of one than this basic rule? Ra: I am Ra. As one proceeds from the primal distortion of free will, one proceeds to the understanding of the focal point of intelligent energy, which have created the intelligences or the ways of a particular mind-body-spirit complex in its environment, both what you would call natural and what you would call man-made. Thus, the distortions to be avoided are those which do not take into consideration the distortions of the focus of energy of love-light, or, shall we say, the logos of this particular sphere or density. These include the lack of understanding of the needs of the natural environment, the needs of other selves, mind-body-spirit complexes. These are many due to the various distortions of man-made complexes in which the intelligence and awareness of entities themselves have chosen a way of using the energies available. Thus, what would be an improper distortion with one entity is proper with another. We can suggest an attempt to become aware of the other self as self, and thus do that action which is needed by the other self, understanding from the other self's intelligence and awareness. In many cases, this does not involve the breaking of the distortion of free will into a distortion or fragmentation called infringement. However, it is of a delicate matter to be of service, and compassion, sensitivity, and an ability to empathize are helpful in avoiding the distortions of man-made intelligence and awareness. The area or arena called the societal complex is an arena in which there are no particular needs for care, for it is the prerogative, honor, duty of those in the particular planetary sphere to act according to its free will for the attempted aid of the societal complex. Thus, you have two simple directives: awareness of the intelligent energy expressed in nature, awareness of the intelligent energy expressed in self to be shared, and when it seems appropriate, by the entity with the social complex, and you have one infinitely subtle and various set of distortions of which you may be aware, that is, distortions with respect to self and other selves not concerning free will, but concerning harmonious relationships and service to others as other selves would most benefit. Questioner: as an entity in this density grows from childhood, he becomes more aware of his responsibilities. Is there an age below which an entity is not responsible for his actions, or is he responsible from the time of birth? Ra: I am Ra. An entity incarnating upon the earth plane becomes conscious of self at a varying point in its time-space progress through the continuum. This may have a median, shall we say, of approximately 15 of your months. Some entities become conscious of self at a period closer to incarnation, some at a period further from this event. In all cases, responsibility then becomes retroactive from the point backwards in that continuum, so that distortions are to be understood by the entity and dissolved as the entity learns. Questioner: then an entity, say 4 years old, would be totally responsible for any actions that were against or inharmonious with the law of one. Is this correct? I am Ra. This is correct. It may be noted that it has been arranged by your social memory complex that the newer entities to incarnation are to be provided with guides of your physical mind-body-spirit complex, thus being able to learn quickly what is consonant with the law of one. Questioner: who are these guides? Ra: I am Ra. These guides are what you call parents, teachers, and friends. Questioner: I see. The entity Aleister Crowley wrote, "Do what thou will," is the whole of the law. He was obviously in understanding, to some extent, of the law of one. Where is this entity now? Ra: I am Ra. This entity is within your inner planes. This entity is in a healing process. Questioner: Did this entity then, even though he intellectually understood the law of one, misuse it and therefore have to go through this healing process? Ra. I am Ra. This entity became, may we use the vibration sound complex, overstimulated with the true nature of things. This overstimulation resulted in behavior that was beyond the conscious control of the entity. The entity thus, in many attempts to go through the process of balancing, as we have described the various energy centers, beginning with the red ray and moving upwards, became somewhat overly impressed or caught up in this process and became alienated from other selves. This entity was positive. However, its journey was difficult due to the inability to use, synthesize, and harmonize the understandings of the desire of the self so that it may have shared in full compassion with other selves. This entity thus became very unhealthy, as you may call it, in a spiritual complex manner, and it is necessary for those with this type of distortion towards inner pain to be nurtured in the inner planes until such an entity is capable of viewing the experience again with the lack of distortion towards pain. Questioner, you stated yesterday that forgiveness is the eradicator of karma. I am assuming that balanced forgiveness for the full eradication of karma would require forgiveness not only of other selves, but forgiveness of self. Am I correct? Ra. I am Ra. You are correct. We will briefly expand upon this understanding in order to clarify. Forgiveness of other self is forgiveness of self. An understanding of this insists upon full forgiveness upon the conscious level of self and other self, for they are one. A full forgiveness is thus impossible without the inclusion of self. Questioner, thank you. A most important point to my way of thinking. You mentioned that there were a number of confederations. Do all serve the infinite creator in basically the same way, or do some specialize in some particular type of service? Ra. I am Ra. All serve the one creator. There is nothing else to serve, for the creator is all that there is. It is impossible not to serve the creator. There are simply various distortions of this service. As in the confederation which works with your peoples, each confederation is a group of specialized individual social memory complexes, each doing that which it expresses to bring into manifestation. Questioner, can you tell me how Yahweh communicated to Earth's people? Ra, I am Ra. This is a somewhat complex question. The first communication was what you would call genetic. The second communication was the walking among your peoples to produce further genetic changes in consciousness. The third was a series of dialogues with chosen channels. Questioner, can you tell me what these generic changes were and how they were brought about? Ra, I am Ra. Some of these genetic changes were in a form similar to what you would call the cloning process. Thus, entities incarnated in the image of Yahweh entities. Thus, entities incarnated in the image of the Yahweh entities. The second was a contact of the nature you know as sexual, changing the mind-body-spirit complex through the natural means of the patterns of reproduction devised by the intelligent energy of your physical complex. Questioner, can you tell me specifically what they did in this case? Ra, I am Ra. We have answered this question. Please restate for further information. Questioner, can you tell me what the difference between the sexual programming, let us say, prior to Yahweh's intervention and after the intervention? Ra, I am Ra. This is a question which we can only answer by stating that intervention by genetic means is the same no matter what the source of this change. Questioner, can you tell me Yahweh's purpose in making the genetic sexual changes? Ra, I am Ra. The purpose 75000 years ago, 75,000 years ago, as you measure time, the changes subsequent to that time were of one purpose only, that to express in the mind-body complex those characteristics which would lead to further and more speedy development in the spiritual complex. Questioner, how did these characteristics go about leading to the more spiritual development? Ra, I am Ra. The characteristics which were encouraged included sensitivity of all the physical sense to sharpen the experiences, and the strengthening of the mind-body complex in order to promote the ability to analyze these experiences. Questioner, when did Yahweh act to perform the genetic change that Yahweh performed? Ra, I am Ra. The Yahweh group worked with those of the planet you call Mars 75,000 years ago in what you would call the cloning process. There are differences, but they lie in the future of your time-space continuum, and we cannot break the free will law of confusion. The 2600 approximately time was the second time we correct ourselves, 3600 approximate time, 3600 approximate time, the time of attempts by those of the Orion group during this cultural complex. This was a series of encounters in which the ones called Anak were impregnated with the new genetic coding by your physical complex means so that the organisms would be larger and stronger. Questioner: why did they want larger and stronger organisms? Ra: the ones of Yahweh were attempting to create an understanding of the law of one by creating mind-body complexes capable of grasping the law of one. The experiment was a decided failure from the view of the desired distortions due to the fact that rather than assimilating the law of one, it was a great temptation to consider the so-called social complex or subcomplex as elite, or different, and better than other selves. This one of the techniques to service to self. Questioner: then the Orion group, I'm not quite sure that I understand this. Do you mean that the Orion group produced this larger body complex to create an elite so that the law of one would be applied in what we call the negative sense? Ra: I am Ra. This is incorrect. The entities of Yahweh were responsible for this procedure in isolated cases as experiments in combating the Orion group. However, the Orion group were able to use this distortion of mind-body complex to inculcate the thoughts of the elite rather than concentration upon the learning teaching of oneness. Questioner: well, was Yahweh then of the Confederation? Ra: I am Ra. Yahweh was of the Confederation, but was mistaken in his attempts to aid. Questioner: then Yahweh's communications did not help, or did not create what Yahweh wished for them to create? Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. The result of this interactions were quite mixed. Where the entities were of a vibrational sum characteristic which embraced oneness, the manipulations of Yahweh were very useful. Wherein the entities of free will had chosen a less positively oriented configuration of sum total vibratory complex, those of the Orion group were able, for the first time, to make serious inroads upon the consciousness of the planetary complex. Questioner: can you tell me specifically what allowed the most serious of these inroads to be made by the Orion group? Ra: I am Ra. This will be the final full question. Specifically, those who are strong, intelligent, etc., have a temptation to feel different from those who are less intelligent and less strong. This is a distorted perception of oneness with other selves. It allowed the Orion group to form the concept of the holy war, as you would call it. This is a seriously distorted perception. There were many of these wars of a destructive nature. Questioner: thank you very much. I believe that to be a very important point in understanding the total workings of the law of one. It is helpful. As you probably know, I must work for the next 3 days, so we will possibly have another session tonight if you think that is possible, and the next session after that would not be until 4 days from now. Do you believe another session tonight is possible? Ra: I am Ra. The instrument is somewhat weak. This is a distortion caused by a lack of vital energy. Thus, nurturing the instrument in physical balancing will allow another session. Do you understand? Questioner: not completely. What specifically shall we do for physical balancing? Ra: I am Ra. 1. Take care of the foodstuffs. 2. Manipulate the physical complex to alleviate the distortion towards physical complex pain. 3. Encourage a certain amount of what you would call your exercise. The final injunction: to take special care with the alignments this second session so that the entity may gain as much aid as possible from the various symbols. We suggest you check these symbols most carefully. This entity is slightly misplaced from the proper configuration. Not important at this time, more important when a second session is to be scheduled. I am Ra. I leave you in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one Creator. Adonai. Good stuff. I love it. Man, I love the law of one stuff. All right, so free will. We start off. We got some really, really cool stuff in here, by the way, and the Yahweh stuff, so we'll get there. And I think there's one, again, I think her her filter, I think, affected this part of the channel a little bit. I'm going to do my best with everything I've been able to try to piece together to help a little bit with this. Free will, starting it off, it's the most important thing from the standpoint of service to others. There is the standpoint of service to self. It's one of the little conundrums on like my manifesting channel, Dan RadioStyle on YouTube. The concept that a lot of people preach over there is that no matter what, somebody's got to be able to react to you the way they have to because it's you pushed out, it's you, it's not even them. Like they're and doing that treats them as though they are, again, a version of yourself, and there's truth in that, but at the same time, not necessarily in control of their own being. And the other side of it is they have free will. And they're two very different angles to come at the same thing. And it's really kind of how their path tends to go. So anybody that is more service to self, that's the direction you got to kind of come at it from. Anybody that's service to others, yeah, free will. You break that line, it's karma. And now karma's paid back almost immediately. Empathy is a huge plus. So you've heard of IQ, right? Your intelligent quotient. EQ, emotional quotient, really is kind of your empathy side of things. And so people that are a little more of the emotionally savvy tend to be of like mind, I'm saying. And a lot of us are here to try to help, and we're a little more empathetic than the average bear. You typically figure it out pretty early. See source everywhere. It's just kind of important, like realizing this is all happening because of source, or even if you want to even make it simple, like the Matrix. Like source made the Matrix, and then put us in it, right? We're within the Matrix. Okay. Either way, I mean, it's all, I don't know. We're here operating in here for a reason, and we're trying to help a bunch of people. Red pill, I guess you keep using the same analogy. When does self show up? Well, this is a funny topic in a lot of ways. So self, obviously knowing thyself is very important in the big picture, trying to make sure that we realize that what we're experiencing in the world around us is a splashback or a rebound of what we've been sending out. So if we like what we've been experiencing, if things are working in the general direction we'd like, keep doing what you're doing. If there are some things that don't seem well, think better ideas of those things. In a sense, maybe I need to make more money, and so I'm focused on the bills not getting paid, when in reality you should be focused on, there's got to be some promotion, or there's got to be some sort of way to enhance the sales, or some sort of, right? And when you're focused in that direction, that's what you'll find, and that's the rising up that you will gain from it, versus staying focused and mired in the problem. And so we've got to learn to be able to come to understanding with our lives and what's being shown to ourselves. And each one of our lives is unique. Your life is unique to you. It's really important to understand that. Crowler, he talks about Aleister Crowley. I have actually read some of Crowley. He was very aware of the law of one. He used it in the negative ways. That's what it was about. He led it down sort of the witchcraft avenue. But yeah, very much. Yeah. They're all operating within the law of one. Again, you can use it for good or use it for evil. But it's what it is. It's there. It's the game. It's we're all playing together. Forgiveness is super important, mostly important because the people that are hurting us, usually in most cases, it's us hurting ourselves. We're trying to, in a lot of cases, realize that we're doing the same thing that we're accusing this person of, that we're hurt by, or they're realizing that it's just we're all one. There's a lot to it. Depends. Every situation's different. They're always fun to hear to a degree, but it's really an issue of you trying to find what is that connection, and then forgiving that in self, for being upset, for feeling like I'm not good enough or not adequate, right? A lot of times it's some sort of inadequacy issue, and you forgive. And that forgiveness process actually is freeing beyond words. Talk about Yahweh communicating. There's just so much fun stuff around that in general. Yahweh, the way they use it as the group. The group is called Elohim. when you get into at least the Bible. That's more the Hebrew way. It's Elohim. And Anunnaki is a possible maybe connection, or a very likely could be a different group entirely. But Elohim was a group. El would be a singular. And Yahweh, and this is when the Hebrew text, Yahweh was one of many Elohim. And he was a specific Elohim. He was the Elohim of Israel, of that area, of Jacob at least, originally. He was the Elohim of that part of the world. It's kind of how it breaks down. I don't want to go sending people off into crazy land, but that is, so the way they speak of Yahweh is kind of from a more of a group standpoint, when in reality Yahweh was likely a very unique, specific individual. Kind of, some would say, somewhat of a warrior. Certainly, didn't take BS very well. I'll tell you that. You do anything even sort of wrong, and you found out about it. So, yes. Missing link. This is part of that genetic change they were talking about. There was a genetic change that happened. There's a missing link. Darwinism doesn't really work. It breaks at that spot badly. And everyone's like, maybe we're just missing it somewhere. If there was a whole layer of people that existed at some point, we'd probably have found some bones for it. We haven't. Genetically, something changed. Something happened. Many say that's what the Garden of Eden was. That's what the Hebrew suggests. Again, I cannot say enough about that friggin' Italian dude. His take on things. Again, he said he's got me believing the Bible more than I ever did before. How about that? That'll trip some people out. Finally, the Yahweh-Orion connection. So Yahweh, the power, the sense of power, I think as an individual, he probably started off good. I want to help these people. I want to be good to these people. And then when things kind of didn't quite go right, maybe got a little frustrated and angry, and maybe kind of turned on the people every once in a while. You know, it's kind of like a lover that, like gets mad at their boyfriend or girlfriend, I guess, typically is how it works. And, you smack them because you're angry. And that's never right, ever, never, ever, ever right. But that's kind of, I think, sort of what happened with Yahweh a few times. Like, he kind of smacked, and he was like, it works. The cower now. All right, good. You'll do what I say. And so there was that weird Orion kind of egocentric, you're the special man, you're the man, you're the important one. And that kind of, I think, led into some of it. Again, there's a lot of information I'm imparting here, but these guys are sort of verifying some of it to a large extent. So the Orion connection is kind of a big thing. All right, we got a couple questions. I'm going to pull the chat over here too in a sec. Hopefully nothing crazy happens, but we're going to do it anyway. Take a chance here. But let's see. The first question I was asked was by Sheila. Sheila's awesome. Michael Salas, Exopolitics. I love this guy. I actually watch him on the regular. He's one of my go-tos. I'm not saying 100% agree with everything he says, but I like Michael. I like what he's doing, and he has some pretty good people on there. But he said he just released a video about the new pope, maybe one who introduces a galactic religion. The pope that's in right now is there's a lot of question as far as I'm concerned. One thing I've learned to do in the big picture is to see what people do. I'm not going to assume anything about this individual. Yeah, he comes from America, which is very strange. Okay, just right off the bat, very, very strange. So we'll see. They have a serpent room in the Vatican with this crazy thing that's supposedly Jesus coming up, and it's just one of the weirdest statues in the back. They've got some very weird stuff throughout their history. So we'll see. There is a Pope prophecy thing, prophecy of the popes, I think they called it. Again, many say it's not true. It's fallacy. All right, whatever. But they're saying likely could very well this, and there was question between whether the last pope was correctly put in, like the guy retired and shouldn't have, I don't know, something weird around that. So they almost invalidated Francis, the last guy. So a lot of are saying this is probably the last pope. And so maybe he fixes it. Many were saying, I think that he was supposed to be like Peter, was supposed to come back and fix the church. Or it's literally the demise of the church, and it will be the destruction and downfall. So I'm hard to say. I'm having a hard time believing that the church is going to be able to pull its proverbial heads out of where they're at, but we'll see. I hope they can. They've got information that we're getting one way or the other. I'll say that much. Rawalt is asking about my eye. My eye is really jacked up. Yeah, so I don't know what was it. I don't know. In the 2 mornings ago, I dropped my girlfriend off at the store at her work, and then I drove home and I basically take a shower. Well, between the point of dropping her off and then hopping in the shower just before, I looked in the mirror. I was like, holy shit. That's what happened. I don't know what happened. I think I have a scratch. It does feel slightly irritated. I mean, I think it's better. It's getting better, I believe. The color's getting darker, which seems less fresh. It was redder before. So, I don't know. It looks bad, especially considering all the different videos out there, people that get jacked up eyes. But if you look, I don't know if you can tell, it's like, it's not on both sides, right? It's not like the whole eye. So it's pretty disgusting. And I'm not happy about it. So there's that. Let's see if I got any other questions in here. Oh, Pet, my good friend Pet. I just don't know what I am supposed to do to help. I know I am a wanderer, but I don't know what I need to do. Usually you feel attracted to something in some way, shape, or form. If it's the energy of like you enjoy being on Twitter or something, you enjoy getting out and talking to people at the store you get out. It's about being an example wherever you go. It's about sharing whatever you do, wherever you're at. What are you into? What do you spend most of your day doing? If you're, on YouTube, part of that, then, maybe try to find some specific videos that learn in an interesting direction, or maybe put inspirational comments, possibly, though most people don't pay that much attention to comments. I think it's kind of not necessarily a good way to feel like you're making a difference, but getting involved, though. Getting on X and stuff like that, and I don't know. Find a way to reach out to the world, something you're interested in. That's all I've ever said before. It's just, if it's something you're into, you'll be able to do it week after week after week, and it makes it so much more fun. Sheila, once again, could the missing link be related to Enki? Well, Enki and Enlil for sure, and then that gets into the Anunnaki and the potentiality that the Elohim are in fact part of them. Or are they maybe part of the other planet series right now? Again, that's one of the things where I'm still a little loosey-goosey, if you will. I haven't been able to connect those dots appropriately. But I do think a lot of that stuff was happening roughly at the same time. And I think the fall of Atlantis was definitely tied into some of these things. I think some of our datings, like they were giving us with the 3,600 years and stuff like that, I do think it goes back a hair further. I think the Great Pyramid is significantly older than they think. So I think a lot of our dating structures are really, really messed up. And again, the truth is out there. They say the Library of Alexandria, burned down, but it did. They got all the good shit out of there. There's just no way. There's just no way that they didn't. All right, let's see if we got any other questions in here, guys. I'm going to go backwards, I guess. Let's see. Is anyone having a hard time? I'm having a hard time right now. That's right. Having a hard time, folks. Let's see. Finding truth, more vigilant, finding out, I don't know. I think I've got people helping here. Yeah, I guess we're good. I don't know. Anyone got any, dates are way off? Yeah, dates are way off and calendars are I agree with you, Clojo. Yeah, when and how and where it happens, I think it's coming. I just think, like I said, I'm noticing the things that are going on. And right now in the solar system, we've got a lot of planets behaving interestingly. Temperatures changing, storms getting weirder. Something happened with the atmosphere. In some cases, having it totally just like blown away, like a huge amount of it. Weird stuff's happening in our solar system right now. And there has been a lot of talk that we were going to be going through this unique time that they called it the photon belt back in the day for any of you guys that are old school. It was always kind of an odd way to describe, just whatever, but whatever the hell it's going to be, we are there or in it or becoming into it, and we're all starting to excite and starting to happen more quickly. And if we don't have enough of ourselves kind of lined up, we'll kind of burn up. You sort of fry from it, if you will. Something jacked up will happen in your life. You'll go crazy in some weird way. You'll do something nuts. You'll injure yourself. You'll get sick. There's just a lot of ways. Again, like I said, I don't know how the separation occurs. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, but we will see. Is there a difference between the Wanderers and the Chosen? It's the Royal. The Chosen, I mean, I don't know. The only Chosen I've ever heard of is like the Israelis, which there's no group of people on this planet that are special over others. A lot of that goes back to the Hebrew of the fact that Yahweh was the Elohim for Israel. So they were the chosen people for him specifically. The Wanderers are a specific kind of soul that they come to help. A lot of us are that. There's also something that a lot of people don't talk a lot about is walk-ins too. There's people that pop in later on in the soul. They swap out. But Wanderers are people that are usually of a higher density. They're usually here to help. They oftentimes don't feel like they're a part of everyone else. They feel very weird here. I do too. I feel like this is the most superstitious place in the universe. Like, it is the weirdest. What people believe here is very strange to me. Like, it's just like, what? Are you kidding? And so that is one of the hardest things for me personally to try to work through. And that's what a lot of Wanderers feel like, is like we're not from here. You know, some would say, you know, they say hybrid, and I don't know. Like, I wonder about that. I'm like, so you're saying if you're in a human body, but your soul's from another place, what does that make you? Because I feel like all you're doing, but what's the body? You know, the body's just a vehicle. So this vehicle's got somebody that's been other places. What is that? I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. So that's, I don't know, not the easiest answer, but yeah, Wanderers, like many of us can be Wanderers. And you could be chosen, I guess, too. I don't know what chosen per se means. It's not capitalized. That's cool. Let's see. Is there going to be a sign of times and seasons in the sky? They always did. They always said, yeah, we'd see something in the sky. So again, what that means exactly, too, we've seen weird stuff. I know the deep state's trying to take advantage of that to a degree. Like, they're doing all sorts of weird stuff. I even think with some of the rockets, they've learned how they can outgas certain things and make it look weird and just freak people out. It's kind of like War of the Worlds. Let's see. I think they are the same because Jesus would have been chosen. I think things are very, very different than we've been told, and I think things change. That's what I do think. I don't think the same people are in charge anymore that used to be, and I don't know. Like I said, a lot of things make sense. I don't want. A lot of confusion is there's a big gap between I think the reality and what most of us believe. Huge gap, in fact. So it's hard sometimes to get past that, and I don't know how, but we will in time. It looks like we got through most of the questions. I love you guys, and my heart goes out to my good friend A-Score. She had quite a fall apparently, so that's not cool. But thank you all for joining us. Thank you for being part of the live, and thank you guys for being part of Law of One. There's still a lot more to go, guys. This is I think the stuff just kind of gets better. We're just getting into it. It's just starting to get juicy. So please come back next Thursday and enjoy the next juicy bite of delicious Law of One nectar. Let's oversell it. That said, we're going to go out with, of course, the Going In song. We're doing Law of One. We're going to try to. Anyways, let's see if I can actually pull this off. There it is. Yes. Law of One. Thank you guys again. Once again, it's on the Fringe. Stand radio style.
Meditation is supposed to be fun. It's not something you do as a grim duty. The trouble with religion as we know it is that it is so mixed up with grim duties. We do it because it's good for you. It's a kind of self-punishment. Well, meditation, when correctly done, has nothing to do with all that. It's a kind of digging the present. It's a kind of grooving with the eternal now. And brings us into a state of peace where we can understand that the point of life, the place where it's at, is simply here and now.
This moment is the creation of the universe. It's starting now. If you look back and wonder whether there was a big bang a long time ago, all you'll see is vanishing traces. The Big Bang is happening now. This is when the world begins. You're doing it. Only you're not doing it by straining. A you deeper than the straining you is doing all this. The same you that is growing your hair and coloring your eyes and making your thumbprints and all that. You don't think about it. You don't strain muscles to do it. But that is what is creating the world. Here it comes. Now. So instead of thinking that the past is the reality which explains everything that happens now, let's look at now.